Good morning and welcome to the Ohio Children's Trust Fund's April Child Abuse Prevention Month webinar. My name is Nicole Silliman and I'm the Executive Director for the Ohio Children's Trust Fund. I'm excited to be here with you all for our last webinar in April. We've really enjoyed highlighting all of the work that's been occurring across the state this month, and we hope that you've had the chance to participate in our webinars and that you've enjoyed them all too. If you've missed any of the webinars this month, they can all be viewed on our website at octf.ohio.gov, and we will put a link to the page in the chat. Before we start today's presentation, I want to review some housekeeping items. We kindly ask that you remain muted throughout the presentation. We will have time towards the end for questions, so please feel free to enter those in the chat. If it's a question we cannot address at this time, we will follow up after today's webinar. Also, this presentation will be recorded and uploaded onto our website for those who could not attend today. If you need a certificate of attendance, please indicate so via the chat with your full name and email address where the certificate should be sent. Please allow us a couple of weeks to send these out depending on the number of requests we receive. I would now like to introduce our presenters from our own team, Maggie Sanders and Mark Knopfs. We are excited to have them share information about the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework and how providers can integrate these protective factors into their practices with the families they serve. So with that, I will turn it over to Maggie to begin. Thank you all.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being on with us today. My name is Maggie Sanders, and I am a financial program manager here with the Trust Fund. What we're going to be discussing and getting to collaborate with you all on today is the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework. Before I turn it over to my colleague Mark, we did just want to put out there too, this is going to be a shortened variation of an actual full day training that we do on the protective factors that we are always available to do for your agencies or for individual participants. So we did want to also just put that out there as we look to get started today. And I will turn it over to Mark to introduce himself.
Thank you, Maggie. My name is Mark Knopfs. I'm a program manager with the Ohio Children's Trust Fund. Welcome everyone to our webinar today. It does look like I'm on mute and that Maggie is talking right now, but we're sitting next to each other, so no confusion there. But we would like to go ahead and dive in. And then just to add on to what Maggie had mentioned, we will share some resources at the end of today's session as well for how to implement the protective factors with families.
I also did just want to mention some of our content today and graphics shared were developed in partnerships with our partners at Best Point and the Consortium for Resilient Young Children. So I did want to put that out there too and give a little shout out to them, as well as just a hello to our existing providers and folks that are on. I see lots of familiar names today and lots of new ones as well. So we're really excited to deliver this with you all today.
So as we do in our full day Strengthening Families training that Maggie and I do, we would like to start off with a very brief activity. So you should see an image on your screen at the moment. So we're just going to ask you to do one thing, and that's in the chat. Go ahead and type in what is the very first thing you notice when you look at the image on your screen. So maybe pick out one thing that you notice in the picture that stands out to you. So I'm seeing some responses coming in. So we're seeing crying baby. I see chaos, baby on the floor, baby's crying in the crib, constant chaos, adult on the phone, busyness, young child curled up on a mat on the floor, no interaction with kids, cracks on the wall, mom on the phone, not engaging kids. I am seeing they're all together. So when we utilize this picture in trainings, we get a lot of the same responses. So typically the first things that we notice in this photo are some of those things that we might consider more of a deficit-based observation. So we're going to notice things like maybe the baby crying, maybe trash that's out on the floor, the mouse trap, the different things like that. But one of the things that we'll work through today as we discuss the protective factors is we'll have a chance later today to look at this picture again and think about how we can revisit it from a strength-based perspective. So we do like to just kick off with that. So thank you everyone for all of your contributions there. We'll revisit this a little bit later.
Yes, as Mark mentioned, keep that photo in your head as we kind of go through and talk about the protective factors today. So the premises of Strengthening Families Framework. One thing I always like to point out is this is the Strengthening Families Framework. There is a Strengthening Families program. These are two different things. So the framework is fluid, and we're going to really dive into that today. But just in case the level set, I do like to point out this is covering the Protective Factors Framework, not the Strengthening Families program. So the framework is actually developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy. Strengthening Families is a strength-based approach built upon the following. It's built upon the fact that everyone can benefit from protective factors. Anybody can use support in one certain area or build up protective factors in their lives, no matter who they are or what their circumstances. It also relates to the premise that everybody has strengths within themselves and everyone has resiliency within themselves. And this is truly a strength-based approach to supporting families and building protective factors in their lives and letting them know they already have those strengths and those things they need within themselves, and just helping them to see that and realize that for themselves. And again, that everybody has a need for some level of support, regardless of socioeconomic status or any other factor. Everybody can benefit from some kind of support in their life to really build robust protective factors.
So strengthening families is an evidence-based practice that strives to support the wellness of families by implementing 6 protective factors. So in the green box in the middle there, you'll see those protective factors. At the center of those factors is the parent. And you'll notice that 4 of those 6 protective factors deal specifically with supporting the parent. Reason for that being by providing parents with those resources, with those supports, we can assist them with taking care of themselves and being better positioned to meet the needs of their children. This model shows that 6 protective factors that strengthen family wellness and protect children from abuse and neglect. So those protective factors are intended to help support preventing abuse and neglect of children. One of the things that the Center for the Study of Social Policy has proven is that when these protective factors are in place, that families are stronger and child abuse and neglect naturally decreases. But one thing to note is that there are other protective factors that do keep families strong. These ones were specifically chosen because they apply more directly to families with young children.
So today, more and more families face a variety of adversities. Some of the adversities that we know families may be facing across Ohio pertain to incarceration, unemployment, struggles with opioid addictions, food or housing insecurities within communities, violence within communities. If you could just take a brief moment and within your own unique community and the counties that you're serving as service providers, please put in the chat any other adversities that you feel your community is facing as well that may not be listed up here. And I'll have Mark so kindly tell me what's coming up in the chat.
So I see child abuse is the first one that is popping up there.
Yeah.
Lack of resources, a couple people saying transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of childcare, transportation again, very consistent. Lack of access to resources or wait lists, so months or years long on some of those wait lists. Seeing developmental disabilities, homelessness, childcare is popping up again, lack of access to healthcare, a lot of transportation showing up in there, addiction, abandonment, lack of education, lack of resource, scarcity.
Mm-hmm. Lack of natural supports. Thank you all. And as you continue to share, we do really appreciate that. It's not to say that one community, may not have another adversity that they're facing or can be impacted by all of these or only some of these. Every community is unique and faces their own adversities. And here, as we get into the protective factors today, we know that when families are faced with all these various adversities and probably more than what was even mentioned here today, that it can put an extreme amount of stress on them and then on the family at large and holistically. So while we can't take all of these things away and remove adversity from the lives of the families we work with, what we can do is build up the protective factors that would lessen the impact of some of these things. And that's really what we're going to get into today.
So adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, is the term used to describe all types of abuse, neglect, or other potentially traumatic experiences that can occur to people under the age of 18. And to the graphic to the right, you'll see those 10 ACEs. So we have physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, and then some of those household challenges like mental illness, potentially being mental illness of one of the parents or caretakers in the home. Divorce, so child experiencing the divorce or separation of their parents is one of those ACEs. Parent treated violently, so that could be potential for the child witnessing domestic violence, having an incarcerated relative in the home, or substance abuse issues within the home. So those are all those 10 ACEs that children under the age of 18 may experience. And those have been linked to risky health behaviors. So potentially, addiction, substance use issues, chronic health conditions, low life potential, and early death. So as the number of ACEs increases, so does the risk for these outcomes. But one of the things that I think is important to emphasize here as well is just having experienced several of these ACEs does not predict that behavior is actually going to happen. It just is known that can increase the risk of those potential outcomes, but it doesn't predict that.
And as we were saying earlier, with ACEs in people's lives, or all the adverse things that folks may have experienced, they are not predictive, as Mark mentioned, and that's the really empowering thing that we're going to dive into today. And they are less impactful when protective factors are truly robust in folks' lives, and that's what we're going to continue to get into. So first, we're going to look at other types of stress, and then we're going to get into the protective factors and how we kind of mitigate some of these things in families' lives who we're working to serve. So there are all kinds of different stressors and types of stress that are out there. So when we consider a stress continuum here, and we have a little image below, positive stress can be things that are exciting, but can still cause an individual stress. I'm thinking of somebody starting school or maybe starting a new job. These things are exciting and can be a positive in someone's life, but they can also bring stress, right? You get a little nervous, you get some jitters doing something, and that is okay. Usually that's manageable, right? It's a stress that people can manage and work through with time. And the next kind of stress would be tolerable stress. So here we're thinking about things like being stuck in traffic when you're already running late. So that's like a tolerable stress, right? Depending on the day anyway. Sometimes traffic can feel more stressful and less tolerable depending on the day that you're experiencing it or what else is going on. But that would be a good example of a tolerable stress. It's not enjoyable. It's going to cause you some stress. You might feel rushed that morning, but ultimately you can work through it. And then at the other end is traumatic stress. These are some of stressors that can be caused by major life events, death in the family, even loss of a job, loss of a home, things that are truly traumatic for a family and may have a more lasting impact as they're working through the course of their lives. So there is that stress continuum that we're mindful of as we're working with families.
So when we're under stress, our stress response system is activated. So under a normal stress, when the brain senses that there's some type of a danger that we might be in, it sends a signal to our body. So this biochemical reaction takes place, and it prepares our body for one of 4 potential reactions. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. I know a lot of the times we hear specifically about fight or flight, or maybe fight, flight, freeze. But fawn is another one of those potential reactions there. I like to think of the angry bear example. So if you encounter an angry bear, you might decide you're going to fight the bear. You might decide that you're going to run. So flight kicks in and you just run from the bear and hope that you're faster. Freeze, you might just be terrified and freeze or play dead. and freeze in that situation. But the other option there, the other outcome there is fawn. So fawn is when you're kind of trying to appease. So in the bear scenario, it might be maybe you have a granola bar and you want to feed the bear, a good bear, and try to make the bear happy and hope that that will allow you to alleviate that stress and that danger, and then get back to that sense of homeostasis, that calmness, once you sense that you're no longer in danger.
What we know about stress too is the longer that you're in it, the harder it is to come out of those states that you may be in your stress response system. So if it's more prolonged, you may get stuck in that, and it's harder, much more difficult to come back to that homeostasis. So on to these protective factors that we keep mentioning and we're going to get into. So we know that protective factors, research shows, lessens the impact of stress. So again, while we can't completely take things away that are happening in people's lives and can cause risk factors are any stressful conditions that a family may be going through, or an event or circumstances. Those are all risks that can increase those overall risk factors in someone's life. Looking at the protective factors, they're going to help kind of balance things out. So hence the cute little seesaw image here. So with support and resilience, the risks are still there, right? They don't disappear altogether, but they may help to balance and buffer some of the risks to families and in folks' lives when those protective factors are built up and more robust for them.
So what we know is that families gain what they need to be successful when key protective factors are robust in their lives and their communities. So we want to make sure that we're working to build those up to support families as they work through challenges that may come up with parenting.
So what does child maltreatment prevention look like? Because when risk factors are higher in the lives of families and parents and caregivers, we know that this can also increase the overall risk that child maltreatment may occur. So you see all these raindrops falling around this image of this family here. You see things like poverty, parental stress, maternal depression, and there's a infinite amount of risk factors or stressors that families can be going through. Protective factors, visually, we picture them as an umbrella that make the things are still happening, right? The rain is still falling around them, but the protective factors provide a cover that helps it to roll off them a little more easily. And when risk factors are when protective factors are higher, those risk factors become lower. So it acts as that umbrella. All of these things are still occurring, but they're more likely to roll off of the family, and the family stays a bit more dry when we're thinking about it in terms of rain metaphor.
And we like to share this quote. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the ACEs. So Dr. Carl Bell from University of Illinois said, risk factors are not predictive factors because of protective factors. So risk factors do not have to predict factors or behaviors because of the presence of protective factors. So now we'll start kind of diving into what are these 6 protective factors that Mark and Maggie keep talking about. So we have our chart here. We'll get a lot more in depth with each of these, but just to kind of briefly summarize. So one of those protective factors is parental resilience. So that is, managing stress and functioning well when faced with challenges, adversity, trauma, social connections. So those are those positive relationships that provide emotional, informational, instrumental, spiritual support for parents and caregivers. Knowledge of parenting and child development. So that's, understanding child development and parenting strategies that can support physical, cognitive, language, social, emotional development, concrete support in times of need. So access to concrete support and services that address the family's needs and help minimize stress caused by challenges. Social and emotional competence of children. So family and child interactions that help children develop the ability to communicate clearly, recognize and regulate their emotions, and establish and maintain relationships. And nurturing and attachment. So creating a loving and supportive environment so that children feel secure. The parent-child relationship is valued. So we'll get into depth on each of these.
Out of curiosity, and you all can just drop in the chat, who is already at least somewhat familiar with these protective factors or have heard of the Strengthening Families Protective Factors Framework? You could just drop a yes or a no in the chat. I see that some are. I assumed so. We're happy to have you all here today. Share at the beginning too. If you have things you'd like to share during, we are monitoring the chat as we're going through these, or if you're comfortable to come off mute, we'll have time at the end where we'll be able to answer some additional questions too. So now we get into it. The first one we're going to talk about today is the social and emotional competence of children. This is the only protective factor that is directly related to the child. When we consider the other protective factors, they're more holistic in the family approach or focused on the parent and caregiver. So what this really focuses on is building up this as a protective factor for children and families is that children are able to communicate their needs clearly, recognize and regulate their emotions in an age-appropriate way, right? This can look different at different ages and stages, and establish and maintain relationships. Why this is important as a protective factor, think about setting boundaries in healthy relationships, just being able to express your needs overall, feeling comfortable and confident in doing so, and being able to develop the skill of regulation, right, as they're going through their lives in order to get through their days or work towards their goals. All of these things are important for those reasons and so many more. So here's kind of a visual pyramid hierarchy of social emotional competence and needs. And where you look at this at the bottom tier there, the larger one, is just general positive relationships and supportive environments. So this is universal. All children need to be provided this, right? And healthy modeling of empathy and the desired self-regulation that we'd like children to have. We need to be able to model that for all children as adults, right? Because a dysregulated adult is not going to be able to help regulate a child, right? We know that. We need to be modeling this for them. Up another tier is social emotional teaching strategies. So this might be for a friend or a child who, you know, is in a class and they have a specific behavior or social emotional skill that they need to work to develop like a little bit more intention and behind the modeling. Say that they really are not into sharing, which honestly we can get. Sharing can be hard, right, for anyone. So they're really not into sharing in class if they're in a preschool classroom. And the teachers would sit with them and model sharing then. Like, we know this child really needs to work on this skill. Let's sit and do an activity together and we can model sharing and work on that together. It's a more focused intent in the middle, right, to help meet the needs of the individual child. Up at the top there is your more intensive individualized interventions. This might be for children or youth who need maybe some more intensive services in place and might have some social emotional goals in place and integrated also into their education plans if they're in school, or maybe they've had some adverse experiences already and they're working through some traumas and they need a little additional support in getting through their day or in a classroom environment. So those are those more intensive individualized interventions that there's a plan in place for supporting them. They have folks that are going to come in and support them in developing their social emotional competence and skills a little further. So it's different for every child. We know every child's different and what their needs are different, but modeling good social emotional practices for children as adults is universal. That should be done, you know, for all of them. So what it looks like in practice for the parent in building up the social emotional competence of their child, it's that warm and consistent response that really fosters a strong and secure attachment with their child. Notice the word consistent. I'm going to get more into that later because that's one of my favorite takeaways from this. And encouraging and reinforcing social skills, giving compliments and very specific verbal praise on what the child's doing well can really reinforce what we're trying to see in social emotional competence. For the child, notice it says age appropriate self-regulation, age appropriate, right? So we're not expecting too much from them, but we are helping them through modeling to work through practice of self-regulation. Ability to form and maintain relationships with others, positive friendships, knowing boundaries, knowing what a positive relationship looks like. And of course, modeling effective communication. So they're able to express their needs clearly. So ways to support children's social emotional competence in practice is just that demonstration of empathy that I mentioned, and helping children to identify and express their emotions, so they can really articulate how they're feeling. Providing opportunities for children to practice social skills, helping parents to appreciate their child's strengths. If they're hearing all the time, oh, they had a really hard day at school and this and this and this, it's not going to help the parents to appreciate they could have been a hard day, but there's a lot of strengths there. And they did this well, and here's what they're good at. And integrating those into conversations with parents so they understand what the child has as strengths. And continue to work with parents, children, and professionals to address challenging behaviors as they occur. Having the right people at the table to continue to brainstorm and wrap their arms around the child and best support them in building this as a protective factor in their lives. Okay.
So the next protective factor is knowledge of parenting and child development. So knowledge of parenting and child development, that really supports the idea that there is no right way to parent, because let's face it, children, they don't come with a manual. There's no how-to booklet, no instruction manual, any of that stuff. But what we can equip parents with is that knowledge of parenting and child development to help them set realistic expectations of children and be able to understand maybe when to be concerned, or when the child's behavior is typical or it's expected, to provide parents with alternative strategies to parenting, because a lot of parents, they learn to parent from their parents, or they're learning by trial and error. So having that knowledge of parenting and child development can give them those alternative strategies that might potentially work better for them than what they have learned through others. I know, like personally, I won't get into detail, but you can probably think about things that your parents did when you were a child that you're like, maybe I won't do that with my child. So, so having that access to that alternative information, those other strategies, can be very helpful for parents. And then for most parents, having that information regarding child development, it provides a deeper understanding about their child or their children. That knowledge aids parents in setting those realistic expectations for their children, which can help them determine, what their children should be able to do for their particular age. It also helps parents understand that there is a range of normal development. So there's not one set milestone for specific child behaviors or activities. For example, you might have some children who are walking at 10 months and some at 18 months, both completely normal within that range. But it's important for parents to understand that there's not one right milestone number that they're looking for their child when it comes to certain activities, behaviors, etc. So while children need support as they advance through the developmental stages, not all respond to the same strategies the same. So it's important that parents have a lot of different options, and we're equipping them with different ways to manage some of those behaviors, some of those milestones with their children. So you see on the screen there, we kind of have those puzzle pieces. So those are different puzzle pieces that make up, some different areas of parenting and child development information that would be helpful for parents. So basic child development information, some of that potentially being, some of those milestones, challenging behaviors, how do we deal with those? So making sure parents are equipped with resources and strategies to manage some of those challenging behaviors. Maybe it's not doing what your parent did to you when you were a child when it comes to managing those behaviors. Teachable moments, being able to have teachable moments with parents to show them different strategies, techniques, so techniques for parenting, behavior management, etc. Modeling and observation, so having those opportunities to maybe model things that work with some children, so parents can see how different strategies are implemented when it comes to working with their own children. And then once again, discipline alternatives. So strategies for offering parenting knowledge and support. So providing just-in-time parent education. So being able to provide information to parents that's age appropriate at the right times when kids are going through specific things. So thinking about, like, maybe if you're working with a parent whose child is preparing to go to preschool, and being able to provide some just-in-time parent education about what can they expect, what should they know. being a role model. So that goes back to the idea of modeling behavior and being able to model strategies for parents that they might want to try to implement on their own. Provide child development resources through multiple means. So we probably don't want to just hand someone a stack of 20 books and say, here's everything you need to know, but maybe being able to provide them information for local resources that might be able to support with any particular issues that they're currently encountering, directing them to events that might be happening in the community where they can access resources, giving them pamphlets, brochures from various places to meet specific needs. Partner with parent education organizations to provide education events, and seek parent input and share ideas. So what it looks like, so it looks like nurturing parenting behavior. So seeing that the parent is utilizing that nurturing parenting behavior. They have appropriate developmental expectations for their child, the ability to create and developmentally support, ability to create a developmentally supportive environment for their child, having positive discipline techniques, and the ability to effectively manage child behavior, and then recognizing and responding to the child's specific needs. Some everyday action to support parenting knowledge and supports. So once again, this goes back to that idea of modeling. So model developmentally appropriate interactions with children. So try it first, show them how it works before asking them to do it on their own. Provide the information, provide those resources on parenting and child development. Encourage parents to observe, ask questions, explore parenting issues, and try out new strategies. And then address parenting issues from a strength-based perspective. So that kind of goes back to that opening image, thinking about the strength-based perspective and not necessarily focusing on those deficits as you work with parents.
That takes us into our third. And while they have build up the protective factor and have robust knowledge of parenting and child development, that really lends itself very nicely. These are all interconnected. I'm sure that you all have picked up on that, but it takes us to nurturing and attachment, which is the next protective factor. If you see resources online and you have forms or paperwork you may pull offline about the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework, not all of them have all 6 on there. Sometimes you'll only see 5 protective factors, and that's because it's really observed that nurturing and attachment is present within all of the protective factors. It plays a role in building them up for each protective factor that exists. So when you consider nurturing and attachment as a protective factor, it's the idea that parents create a loving and supportive environment so that children feel secure and that the parent and child relationship is valued. So key components of nurturing and attachment and building it up as a protective factor. A child may experience a feeling of warmth when they're with their parent or caregiver, the individual that takes care of them, comfort, that they feel safe in their environment. And the important call out I like to make here is consistency. No parent or no person is perfect. It's not about having a perfect parenting day every single day. It's about consistency. So it's if you lose your cool once and you yell at your child that day, that's not going to completely damage the attachment, right, you have with your child, because consistency is important and the interaction with the child most of the time is what's most important. Consistently, the child should know what they can expect from their parent or caregiver, the person that takes care of them, day in and day out. And usually that should be anticipated as warmth, comfort, and safety, right? So not perfection, but consistency. Most of the time, this is what they can come to expect, because parents and everybody just has a bad day. Their day is not their best, but how they are majority of the time is what's important. And knowing that if they do lose their cool or if something happens, that they can always repair by saying sorry. Hey, I shouldn't have talked to you like that today. I lost my patience. I'm sorry about that. And the value add that that can have in that attachment and that feeling of safety is the coming back and repairing. So not perfection, but consistency and repair when necessary is what really builds that secure nurturing and attachment. So what does it look like in day-to-day with parents and their children? It's responding to their child with warmth and consistency, as I mentioned, that fosters strong and secure and attachment. It's little things that a parent can do, such as when they're coming to pick up, at childcare or at school, they're not on their phones. They're making eye contact. They're greeting their child. They're saying hello and giving a hug. It's things like that that really build up that attachment and relationship. It's helping their child to trust that the environment is safe, recognizing and embracing their child's strengths and individuality. That one was a hard one today. Teaching their child how to form and maintain healthy relationships with others, and having that healthy relationship with the parent and caregiver, the individual that takes care of them. They are going to then model relationships in their own lives after that. So it's so important that they know what that healthy relationship looks like. So everyday actions to support nurturing and attachment that you can do in your communities, and that likely a lot of your agencies are already doing, and inviting parents to engage with their children during drop off and pickup, and creating a family routine. If a child's having a hard time saying goodbye, at drop off at daycare, creating a routine that the child and the parent can both depend on, reading one book together, doing one thing together before they leave, something like that. Talking to children about their parents and caregivers during day-to-day interactions with the children, modeling nurturing and consistent care, aligning our own behaviors and words with those of a parent, creating a team system, right, between the folks that take care of them, being a child care service provider, or at school, and the parent, so that they feel that nurturing and attachment across, their home and the systems that they're attending. Supporting children and families by understanding the impacts or loss of loss or trauma, and how to respond appropriately. So having that relationship and rapport with the families we serve, so we can understand what is truly holistically going on in their lives and how we can best support them.
So the next protective factor is social connections. So that's referring to those positive relationships that provide emotional, informational, instrumental, and spiritual support. And I think sometimes we take for granted that not all parents have those social connections. Some parents might be more on an island by themselves and just so consumed with the daily hustle and bustle of parenting and working and going to school and all the other things going on in their life, that they're missing some of those social connections that can greatly benefit them when it comes to parenting. Because parents can benefit from those reliable social networks of support, because sometimes it's good for parents to just get together and talk about parenting and be able to share strategies, talk about what's going on, because often they'll find that, depending on the ages of their children, they might have children who are going through similar things, and they're able to share maybe what's worked or hasn't worked for them to help build those social connections for those parents, to help them relieve some of that stress, create a safety net for those parents. So what social connections could look like for a parent or caregiver is having multiple friendships and supportive relationships with others, having those opportunities to de-stress and talk to others about some of those things that are going on, and not just feeling like they're isolated and that they're in it by themselves. So making sure that they have those various friendships and supportive relationships, feeling respected and appreciated. So having others that they can go to who are affirming for them that they are doing a great job as a parent, and they are respected, they are appreciated. It is noticed, the links that they're going to provide for their child and be a great parent. Accepting help from others and giving help to others. So that goes both ways. So being able to be open and have those people that you can go to ask for help, ask for advice, and then provide that in return. Skills for establishing and maintaining connections. So knowing how to kind of follow up if you are going to a parent group or a parent meeting or a parent class, being able to effectively connect with some of those other parents and keep those lines of communication open. So making sure that parents have those skills to continue to connect with others to create those social connections. Everyday actions to support social connections. So help families value, build, sustain, and use social connections. So maybe connecting them to particular activities in the communities where they can meet other parents, meet other families, have conversations with other parents and families, create an inclusive environment. So making sure that everyone is included and no one feels isolated or excluded from the group, facilitating mutual supports, and promoting engagement in the community and participation in community activities. Strategies for building social connections. So making sure that parents are being greeted by name so that they feel respected, they feel welcome, providing informal space for parents to kind of hang out and have that open place where they can have those conversations and connect with others. Potentially even delivering parent support programming and facilitating that for parents and giving them those opportunities to come together. Organize structured activities that bring parents with similar interests together, and then reaching out to isolated parents and trying to pull them into to make sure that they don't feel isolated, they don't feel on their own.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Big on social connections. Everyone needs someone, right? At least one someone that they feel that they can go to in their lives and build up that protective factor with them. So that takes us to concrete supports in times of need. Access to concrete supports and services that address families' need and help minimize stress caused by challenges. So when we say concrete supports, we're thinking of things like utility assistance, housing stabilization, food, addressing food insecurities that a family may have, critical items that are going to support a family in being safe and meet their immediate needs. So parents are able to better meet the immediate and critical needs of their family when they're connected to services and supports. We know that families may have multiple protective factors that they're working on at one time. It's not like they have to pick one to work on building up in their lives at one time, or that we can only support them with one at a time as service providers. Concrete supports, we do hear often, need to immediately be met before families sometimes are open to working on other protective factors, for the simple fact that it's very hard to participate in other things such as parent education sessions or other goals they may have and be working on if they're sitting there in that session worrying about what they're going to give their children for dinner, if their lights are going to be on when they get home. So having concrete supports in their lives is very important. We have various levels of concrete supports that we offer through Ohio Children's Trust Fund, through many of our services available as a key program component. So what does supporting families with concrete supports look like? Seeking and receiving support when needed. And it's really about taking stigmatization away from families and accessing supports and asking for help if they need it is critically important. Making resources available to everyone that may be in a group, rather than having to have the parents and caregivers approach you for a service or feel like they have to speak up and be the only one that may need help with something. So really destigmatizing is critically important in building up. This is a protective factor as well. Knowing what services are available and how to access them, keeping an accurate resource bank with providers who are still working at the agency is critically important, so that if you do refer them to someone, they actually get to someone, or doing a warm handoff with them, right, to get to what they need help with. Demonstrating persistence and having families and showing that they do have persistence within themselves and helping them navigate getting the resources that are needed for them, and modeling how to advocate for themselves effectively in order to get the supports that they need. So everyday actions to support concrete supports, families having access to concrete supports. Respond immediately when families are in crisis, and doing our best to get as quick of resources to the families as possible. Providing information and connections to services in the community. Again, I say, like, if this is a parent education class and there's a resource in the community available, pass information out to everyone. You never know who may need it. They may not be comfortable enough to come forward at that point in time and say, I really need help with this. But if everybody is getting the resource, or if it's just available to everyone, they may feel more comfortable in pursuing that resource and taking the information. And helping families to develop skills and tools they need to identify their needs and connect to supports. That way, if you're unavailable or they can't get in touch with you, they have resources available and know how to and feel comfortable getting to them on their own. So strategies for connecting to concrete supports, distributing community resource guides, making sure they're current, like I mentioned, doing our best to make sure that the contact on there is somebody that is with that agency and is the correct person to get them to. Inviting community partners to share information with families and staff, referring parents to community resources, and assisting parents to overcome any barriers they may be experiencing, and asking for help.
And that takes us to our sixth and final protective factor, so parental resilience. So when we refer to parental resilience, we're referring to that ability to manage stress and function well when faced with challenges or adversity or trauma, because resilient parents are able to deal with some of those parenting issues and difficulties as they arise, and they're able to better manage stress and respond to the needs of their children. Emotionally resilient parents, even if they were potentially maltreated when they were a child, are less likely to abuse or neglect their own children. And then on the other end of that is they're able to model that parental resiliency for their own children. So that makes their own children less likely to grow up to, abuse or neglect their own children, and it makes them more likely to be resilient parents themselves. So what this looks like, so resilience to general life stress for parents and caregivers. So that looks like having hope, having optimism, being self-confident, being able to effectively solve problems, having self-care strategies, willingness to ask for help, and the ability to manage negative emotions. Resilience to parenting stress, so not allowing stress to interfere with your nurturing of your child, having a positive attitude about parenting and your child. Some everyday actions to support parental resilience, demonstrate in multiple ways that parents are valued, honor each family's race, language, culture, history, and approach to parenting, encourage parents to manage stress effectively. So that could be encouraging them to identify what are those little things that they can do for themselves, even at the busiest of times, to try to manage their own stress. For some parents, it might be, I'm going to take that 10-minute walk. I'm going to take 15 minutes to just quietly watch a show, watch a video, something that I can do for myself that's going to help me manage my stress effectively. Support parents as decision makers and help build decision-making and leadership skills with parents, and then help parents understand how to buffer their child during stressful times. And then strategies for promoting parental resilience, show parents they're valued to help build that confidence, show parents that others are concerned about them and want what's best for them, showing them that there is help available, providing trusting relationships and extra support, and then helping them identify possible solutions. And then even more importantly, they're following up with them to see how those solutions are working for them.
Right. And that took us through our protective factors. So these are just some general everyday actions that I'm sure you all are operationalizing at your agencies or already using to build up protective factors in families. If you're, working in childcare in a setting where maybe you're not interacting as regularly with the parents, unless it's just that drop off or pickup, just learning their names to get to know them better can make a big difference. Saying good morning and using their name while saying good morning, it just feels completely different, right, than just a general hello, and it creates that attachment with the parent. Planning events to educate and connect parents. I know you all have lots of events in your communities that you all are likely participating in. Making physical changes to make your program more parent friendly. I'm thinking things like, I know at certain Head Start agencies, they have a little area where parents might be able to hang out and gather. They have resources available, such as free tables where families can bring in, clothes maybe their children have grown out of, but could be really helpful to others. Just a general point where parents have somewhere to go within the agency that helps them to feel welcome and have access to the things they may need. Getting training on child abuse and neglect and community resources, and working with families.
So we're going to revisit the picture from the beginning now. This time I have kind of an either or question for you. So you can put one of two things in the chat. One of them being, what do you notice in this picture now if you're looking at it from a strength-based perspective instead of that deficit-based approach? And the other thing that you could put in the chat is, how might you utilize one of the protective factors to support this family? So feel free to go ahead and type in the chat. So what are some potential strengths you see here as you look at this picture now? Or how might you utilize one of the protective factors to support this family? So I'm seeing strengths. They have food. They are together. Yep, they're together in a room. They have food. They have electricity. So yeah, you can see the TV's on. The mom is on the phone. So it's apparent that they have electricity. The kids aren't actually left alone. I'm seeing protective factor, connect them to a furniture resource potentially. I like that. Strengths, children have toys and coloring pages. Seeing food, toys, mom is reading a book. Maybe mom is on the phone with a provider to schedule an appointment. I like that perspective. I don't think we've heard that one before. Hopefully the mom is talking to someone she loves and who supports her. The baby has a place to sleep. Connect to a support system that can assist with babysitting. Connect with childcare. The baby and dogs are asleep. Children seem content other than the baby. So childcare resources. Seeing a lot of great stuff in here. Seeing furniture resource again, maybe a cleaning or extermination resource. It appears as if mom is trying her best to keep the family together and in close proximity. And the mom is there to supervise. Yeah, she's there to supervise. And the family has their basic needs of food, shelter, etc.
Awesome. Well, yep, when you first see the picture, immediately what generally stands out to folks is, I think someone used the word chaos, and it does certainly seem like that when you first look. And upon looking further, there's always strengths. There's always a positive there with the family that we can work to try to reinforce. So thank you all for sharing those.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so what we have now, and we'll get into some question and answer as well. I know we're running close to time, just perfect on time. So these are some state resources, and I did see that someone asked if you all could have a copy of the PowerPoint slides. They will be posted on the website, so you'll be able to see these resources again and explore the links if you would like to. There's all kinds of good information on these. We also have some additional just general strengthening families resources here as well. We did just want to make mention again too, this is the super abridged version of this, the condensed 1 hour version. Mark and I do these trainings free of cost to agencies around the state. We're happy to travel to you. We're happy to offer it virtually. So if this is something your agency would like and could benefit from, we do have our contact information too. So that you all are able to get in touch with us if that's something you're interested in.
And also I will put in one last plug here too. So I know we talked about knowledge of parenting. We do have currently registration open for some Triple-P trainings. So if you or others at your agency are interested in some Triple-P trainings, free trainings, please feel free to reach out to myself or Maggie as well. And we're happy to discuss those with you.
So I see that Mark in the chat had a question about the website, which was responded to. Jamie, I see you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint. We will have that posted, the PDF of the PowerPoint to the website as well. But we can also connect offline if you want to shoot one of us an email and ensure that you get that. Oh, thank you, Becky. We appreciate it. Does anyone else have any general questions that we can assist with today? You can either put them in the chat, or if you're comfortable coming off mute, we're happy to help. Well, I'm hearing
Okay. Real quick question. It sounds like this covers, and first of all, thank you for this. This has been very informative. This sounds like it covers everybody in your care, but is there anything different that is for severe autistic kids?
So the framework itself wraps its arms around all families. So it's absolutely appropriate in the protective factors and using those with all families, including parents and caregivers who have children that may have varying needs and levels of support that they are working towards. I would say the protective factors most prominent for that and building that up for families is probably knowledge of parenting and child development, just wrapping arms around those parent and caregivers and supporting them and navigating that. And whatever they need assistance with, but the protective factors certainly apply to all families.
Okay, thank you.
Not hearing any other questions right now, but you do have our email, so you know how to get in touch with us. Please do not hesitate to reach out. We are happy to help with any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mark and Maggie, for the great presentation. And make sure you visit our website where we will post all of our April Prevention Month webinars. But we appreciate everybody joining us today. And thank you again, Mark and Maggie.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of
Thank
your
you.
week.